My name is Emory M Moore Jr. and this is Exercise and Movement Technique. And today we are again here at Fluid Fitness, 1026 6th Avenue in Manhattan, on the 3rd floor today. And we're here with Deborah Quilter, author, movement therapist, and consultant. And thank you so much for taking the time, because I know you're very busy and what have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, of course. What you do is very fascinating. And if you wouldn't mind, give us a little background about your training and what it is that you actually do for us wonderful people.
I do a number of things.
Okay.
I think what we'll talk about right now is what I'm known for the most, which is ergonomics.
Okay.
Ergonomics is the science of fitting the job to the worker rather than vice versa.
Interesting.
So instead of someone straining to do a job, they make the job more comfortable for the person who's doing it. But as you know, this is only part of the solution.
Sure.
Because the person who's moving also needs to move well, move into
Sure.
posture, take breaks, and do all the other things that they need to do. And it was a very interesting story about how I got into it.
Okay.
I'm a writer primarily, and I was writing for a health and fitness magazine. And I was doing a story on the Miller Institute for Performing Artists.
All right.
That was years ago, up at St. Luke's Roosevelt. And there was a doctor there who his purpose was to help the artists keep working. So there would be,
Longevity.
yes, in their careers. He had a lot of people from the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, dancers from various companies, and saxophonists, jazz saxophonists.
Sure.
All these different people would come in. And then eventually people from Reuters and the New York Times and all these news outlets started coming in because they were using computers and they were getting injured at the computer. So it was a very interesting story. So you asked about my background. I sat in while the doctor was diagnosing and treating patients for 6 months. And
So
wrote
wonderful,
a book on it.
a wonderful ability.
Wonderful education,
Sure.
let me tell you. And I studied with the best. It's really, I am so thankful to the people who've taught me what I know. But now, 20 years later, people are still in the dark ages.
So was he your primary teacher?
At first. But then I branched out.
Okay.
Because he was a doctor.
Right.
He was a good movement analyst.
I see.
And he understood the connection between poor technique. It's like a tennis player. If they use poor technique, they'll get tennis elbow. Anyone. You know this. We know this. But people use their hands in the most dangerous fashion without even being aware of it. And every new wave of technology brings in a new injury. For instance, text neck is the big thing right now because people are getting terrible neck injuries from using their smartphones. There's also text.
They're also getting run over by cars.
This is true. I know someone who gashed her forehead when she was walking into
Not that I'm
a
laughing
stairway.
at his misfortune, but
Yes.
I'm laughing at the absurdity of it.
It is absurd. It really is absurd. And people are without realizing it, they're sacrificing their health for technology because the technology was designed by people who have no idea how the body is supposed to move.
I don't know if I go along with that because, there are some smart people and there are a lot of times people are not utilizing devices as they were intended. So I would say that that's a mixed bag because there's some amazing, I also am involved in some aspects of technology and development with certain products. And you would be surprised at what people think about, the end user, the result of the experience of the user really is big forethought, but what happens after it gets into somebody's hands is entirely different. Driving an automobile is a perfect example. I can take you through the course and you're supposed to stop at the red light and you're supposed to signal before you go. But how many people signal in New York City before they make a turn? But they've been taught to do that. So I would say that depends. I would say that depends.
Well, unfortunately, the if you're looking at the computer keyboard, the
Sure.
standard keyboard, that forces you.
The standard
The
keyboard.
standard keyboard forces you into improper postures.
Okay.
And
So what is it about the standard keyboard? You're talking about the ones that don't come apart, that are not
Yes.
quote ergonomic, that don't have wrist.
you shouldn't be using a wrist rest.
Okay.
The hand needs to really float above the keyboard. That's another big misconception. People get
Well, the
into
wrist
a-
rests also are for the mouse, the uses of the mouse. I was going to
Yes.
say mice, but it's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't.
So please enlighten us.
Well, if you look at the standard keyboard, where are all the important keys? They're on the periphery, by the pinky, which
Okay.
is the weakest finger. And it leads to something called ulnar deviation, which leads to epicondylitis in your elbow. And most people aren't trained. This is what I do. I train people how to use their hands
Okay.
to do the least damage at the keyboard or whatever other technology.
So do
you're
you
using.
think it's possible to, because, I mean, I've been involved with people for many years, training them with those types of things, like with the Olympic team in England for a little while, I was working with them. Baseball players, I've had people come to me. There's a particular massage technique that we were using that was going to assist them in being able to have more longevity. But isn't the amount of activity kind of stacked against you when you get to a certain level? You know, battering, anybody who's doing professional movement, we've all gotten to that point where we know that we should be resting, stopping, not training, but you still got to perform, you still got to move.
This is music to my ears.
So what I'm asking is it possible to counteract the fact that you need to do some things too much? Because sometimes you just need to. Like I climb mountains, for instance. I can't, you know, we're up on the mountain or we're 20 some odd miles from wherever we need to be. I can't just be like, well, we're not going to get back. So where does your technology or your technique come in to being able to combat the repetitive injuries?
Yes, these are called cumulative trauma
Okay.
injuries or overuse injuries. There's many names for repetitive strain injuries.
Sure.
And you just brought up a really critical point. And I'm going to separate what you're asking
All right.
from the occupational element,
Okay.
because this is an important distinction. Someone who's a performing artist, whether they're playing a violin in a symphony or they're dancing on stage in a ballet, doesn't have the same opportunity to take rest breaks
Right.
when they need to.
Right.
This is where it becomes really difficult, because people will come to me and will say, you need to take a break every 20 minutes, and this is a healthy person. If you've been injured, there's a formula by which you work for a certain amount of time without pain.
Sure.
You cannot allow yourself to get into pain, because then you're just increasing the injury. So there's a formula, it's written about in my book, where you decide how much work you can do, and then you have to take your break sooner. So you might be able to work for 5 minutes and then you'll need a 10-minute break or something like that. The rest is critical, because when you're dealing with soft tissue injuries, the trauma of this constant movement or static loading, which is holding still, which is another big risk
Sure.
factor for
Applying
injury.
pressure for extended periods of
Yeah,
time on a
it's-
specific area
It's
restricts blood flow.
many things, many things. So it can lead to scarring. And when you have scarring, that tissue doesn't respond the same way a
You're talking
normal.
about scar tissue in the musculoskeletal system. You're talking
Or
about
the
muscle-
tendon, yeah.
Tendons are very difficult.
Fascia.
I can shoot.
I know, everybody's got a tendon, you know, it's like, here, let me show you my tendon. But yes, you're correct. So, what we're talking about at the base is, if you're taking, okay, so you're a mountain climber, you really have to get down that mountain. This is an exceptional.
And up.
You have to get up and down the mountain. a choice you're making
Just true.
willfully. You're working out for this choice.
Just
You're
true. The training is
you're
definitely
training yourself.
Right.
Hopefully you're not using your computer too much, because you can't use your other pair of hands to do your keyboarding and save the good hands for the mountain. And this is where it gets really tricky, because you'll have someone who plays the guitar in a rock band on the weekends, loves video games, and works as an IT person.
Right.
They're sitting ducks for injuries.
The accumulation.
We can't, the amount of minute hand activity that we're doing is too much for the human body. And people say, well, we're going to adapt. No, we're going to get injured. Repetitive strain injury is the leading occupational injury in not only the United States, but I wager in the industrialized world.
Well, don't you think it's a rather complex question, a complex problem, in that the reason that exercise works is because you give enough stimulus for the body to change. If you give too much stimulus, it breaks down. That's how martial arts works.
Yes.
You know, we give you too much in an area that's presumably weak, and it goes bye-bye.
Yeah.
But we also know that you can change the density of bones, you can change the thickness of tendons,
Yes,
you can
yes,
change,
yes.
you know, even blood flow
Yes,
and neurological
yes,
response.
yes.
So there are a whole host of people who are sedentary. You know, I work in
Yes.
schools, and I find that the teachers who are much younger than I am are evidencing injuries that you would normally see in people who are either much older or they've been significantly more active, because they're atrophying. You're seeing the same kinds of injuries you'd see in a football player.
Yes.
You know, you're seeing spinal problems, you're seeing
Yes.
knee decay, you're seeing things like
Yes.
this because the muscles were jelly, right? They're not
Yeah,
enough to
yeah,
support
yeah.
the body, and so we still have gravity on us, and so we're breaking down. So my question is since we have many facets to society, we have a huge population of people who don't really do much activity other than what their job calls for, which now is less activity because technology, as you pointed out, the labor-saving devices are actually making the body work less.
Yes.
Then we have people like myself and other people who are very active in many different pursuits in conjunction with living a modern lifestyle, because I do a video blog, I write and do, produce articles, and just for work, proposals, using the computer, using the phone, which I prefer using the voice personally. But anyway, my point is how can you ascertain whether it was the person who didn't do enough or the person who was doing too much? And isn't there some kind of a cross-training effect if you are stronger, if you are more agile, if you are more, poised in your motion, you have more of an ergonomic approach to motion?
You are an athlete at the computer, essentially.
Okay.
And you have to work out to keep your body strong in order to use a computer safely. Some people think, because what you were talking about earlier, what do we do when we want to strengthen a muscle? We overload it.
Sure.
And
Well,
we
you
get
stimulate
we
it enough.
stimulate it enough so that it grows.
Yeah. I'm not so thrilled with the overload principle
Neither
per
am I.
se,
Neither
but
am
that's
I.
another
But
conversation.
that's the fitness, and I think we agree on that too, because I'm not a big fan of overload.
Per se, depends
Per
on
se.
what your intention, what your need is what
Yeah.
I'll go to.
Precisely. But people ask me, well, how come I'm not getting stronger since I'm using my hands so much? But they're not looking at the whole picture. Because if you're sitting here like this, resting everything, with your head way forward, you're doing so much damage. Sitting is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day in terms of the danger, all-cause mortality.
Mhm.
There's study after study after study showing the dangers of sitting. So right off the bat, sitting is a risk factor for many injuries. But you're not going to be, what happens with repetitive strain injuries is they're overusing certain muscle groups
Right.
and underusing other muscle
Most
groups. There's
definitely.
no balance.
Most definitely.
They're not doing an intelligent, balanced program. Nobody is teaching posture anymore. It used to be that the mothers of America would say, sit up straight, Johnny. Stand up straight, Susie. And the people would get this message. But I don't think that the mothers of America are saying this anymore. And I hope they start to say this. Tell the children, to sit up tall. You're not straight. That's right. But posture is the key to a happy life. And it's the key to using a computer or any other repetitive device safely.
Okay.
That with breaks, that
Rest.
with the perfect balance of exercise. People come to me for help because they're in a lot of pain from using a computer. They need to strengthen their muscles without exacerbating the injuries.
Most
And
definitely.
very often-
That's the art form.
That's the art form. Thank you.
That's the art form.
Thank you for saying that. Yes, because very often they'll go to the physical therapist and they'll have them, oh, you're weak here, start doing wrist curls. No. That's like doing 100,000 more keystrokes. Would you like to learn a little neck release
Sure.
while we're doing this?
Of course. Release my neck.
Okay. So let's have you just bring your shoulder up, but not with any force, and then relax it down a couple of times. Lift it up a couple of times. Good. And then, are you inhaling or exhaling as you're doing this?
Inhale.
Okay. And then exhaling down. You can try it both ways for fun. Okay. Now, just compare your two shoulders. Which one is more relaxed?
Oh, right side for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, so let's add a little cherry on top here.
Okay.
So as you're lifting, let your ear come a little closer, and you want to make sure you're doing this perfectly. You're not turning your head, which
Oh,
would be
yeah.
this.
Rotations, yes.
You're tilting your head. You're bringing your ear. It's like your shoulders telling you a little secret, and then you say, "Oh, this is good." And good. And yeah, very gentle.
I'm really lopsided.
Good.
I have to give
We'll have to do the other
some
side
love,
so
yeah.
it doesn't get jealous. Okay, so let's do the other side.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it so people can see so they can see the magic,
So lift the shoulder.
the Deborah magic.
And then just let it come down. And you want to be very polite with your body
Okay,
so that you're not forcing anything or
would you be so kind as to raise and lower
yes,
Mr. Shoulder?
just a little bit, just what you're in the mood for. It's a very small movement. Oh, much better. Good.
And then I'm
with the
bringing
breath.
my
And then you tilt your head, and then we're nice bookends here. Good. And again, good.
It's cool. Maybe we can have like a synchronized shoulder relax class.
Yeah, I know great neck and shoulder. I could spend 3, 4, 5 classes just on the neck and shoulder. That's my specialty. The ignored areas are what I like to specialize in. The feet, the hands, and the neck. There's
Well-
also mouth.
Well, thank you. Once again, I'm gonna slide this in there.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Most definitely.